Hello, heathens, and welcome to episode 4 of Cult News. I am so fucking annoyed right now. I just read an entire article and I realized I had not pressed start stream. So I was talking to you guys for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I don't know, I was explaining all this stuff and nobody was listening. I even checked, like, the thing I'm using now, Twitch Studio, and didn't notice. So, yeah, it's a good day. So, yeah, welcome to Cult News. Just a general content warning. Almost all cults involve sexual abuse, including this, and also a ton of other abuses and other heinous acts. So I'm going to be going over that in like every single episode. So take 2. I have several articles for you here tonight. The last one, I don't know if I'm even going to get to now because I have wasted my life reading this article over once. Because the last one is really long. I was saying that I might not read all of it because it is insane. I definitely cannot read all of it. I can't sustain my speaking voice for that long. So anyway, this is the first article of the night by Stephanie Nolasco for Fox News. Son of polygamous cult leader Warren Jeffs speaks out in doc, "We Were Brainwashed." Wendell Jeffson has chosen to come forward for the true crime doc, Preaching Evil. So he has changed his last name. He's the son of Warren Jeffs. The Jeffs are the leadership family of the FLDS, and they pretend to be prophets who speak to God. So yeah, let's hear what he has to say. Wendell Jeffson can vividly recall the moment he briefly stepped out of the Yearning for Zion Ranch, which was run by his father, polygamous cult leader Warren Jeffs. Jeffson was about 7 years old when he first saw a highway in El Dorado, Texas. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. It was his first glimpse into an outside world he had never experienced before. I already read this article once. I'm still reading it wrong. I saw cars zooming down the highway. It was crazy, he recalled to Fox News Digital. I had never seen anything like that. I was just so enthralled with the idea of going 40 miles an hour. It was like going to another planet. Jeffson, along with his mother Vicki Thompson and his sister Sarah, have come forward to share their story about life inside the polygamous denomination in Peacock's new true crime documentary, Preaching Evil, A Wife on the Run with Warren Jeffs. And that's the creep right here, Warren Jeffs. It explores how Jeffs rose to power within the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, FLDS, during the 90s, and how he was arrested and convicted following accusations of assault, rape, and child abuse. The four-part series features a sit-down with Naomi Jessup, one of Jeff's ex-wives who served as his personal scribe, as well as interviews with the authorities involved in the raid of the compound and the attorneys that later brought Jeffs to justice. I think what really compelled me to get our story out there is, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get involved in these types of environments and go down a similar path, Jeffson explained. We were very sheltered. I didn't see any outside world perspectives, and when I came out into this world, I wanted to experience all those things. But I really wanted to show people that after I left, I didn't have to go down any harmful roads. I found a way to take those negative experiences that I've gone through and turn them into a more positive future for me. So what he's talking about there is oftentimes when people leave these high control groups, they are exposed to all this stuff that they never had access to within the groups, like any type of addictive substance, alcohol, gambling, prescription drugs, street drugs, you name it. So if you watch the documentary Sons of Perdition, I think it's called Sons of Perdition or Boys of Perdition. It was on Netflix. I haven't checked if it's still on there in a while, but it is about young men and boys in this group who essentially get kicked out, and a lot of them end up as drug addicts, or even drug dealers, because they just don't know how to handle themselves in this world, as well as like the trauma of being in a high control group, the trauma of being rejected by it. So they talk about in that documentary how they have, if they have too many men in their communities, they will pick the ones that they don't like for whatever reason. They don't adhere properly to their rules, or they pissed off someone higher up for some reason. And some of the younger men will be tricked into, say, going to a job site or something, and essentially dropped off in the middle of nowhere outside of their compound, and they have no way of getting back. And basically my cat just joined us. They run out of women because of this whole polygamy practice. So if like the higher up men take on 30 wives or something like that, that means there's less wives to go around for the other men. So they have to like pare down the amount of men essentially as they're coming of age. So yeah, it's really gross, really sad. Yeah. You probably couldn't see on this camera, but her mouth was hanging open, like. Okay, back to the article. That's that sicko Warren Jeffs with Vicky Thompson, this man's mother. She's looking quite a bit younger than him there. Polygamy is a legacy of the early teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the mainstream church abandoned the practice in 1890 and now strictly prohibits it. The FLDS broke away from the Mormon Church and was formed so that members could continue practicing plural marriage. It was headquartered on the Utah-Arizona border. Jeffson's grandfather, Rulon T. Jeffs, took power in 1986 and ruled until his death in 2002 at age 92. He left behind an estimated 75 widows and 65 children. So yeah, the guys who are higher up in the church get the most wives. Following Rulon's death, Jeffs took over as the group's prophet. In the FLDS, it is believed the prophet can speak directly to God and direct which male members can enter heaven. The prophet can also perform marriages and assign wives to their husbands. In pleasing the prophet, loyal members are rewarded more wives who belong to their spouses for eternity, NPR reported. Members believe that each man must have at least 3 wives. So you see where the imbalance comes from. I didn't know any differently, Jeffson said of his childhood. You can't compare the life I had with the life I have now. It's like I was blindfolded without even knowing I had the blindfold on. It's all you know. I was happy, to be honest with you. I was never abused physically. Emotionally, that's another story. We were brainwashed, but I had a great work ethic. I had a lot of siblings, and of course I had a great mom. I lived in a bubble. Jeffson said growing up he had a good relationship with his father, but once he became the leader of the FLDS, the relationship was eliminated. It is believed that Jeffs had about 78 wives and at least 60 children. He didn't spend time with me, said Jeffson. I didn't have an opportunity to bond with him at all. I got to the point where I could only see him once every few months, and when I would see him, it'd be very brief. It just felt like he was passing through. I mean, if you have 60 kids, I can't imagine that you can dedicate time to each one properly. And this is him here, Wendell Jeffson. As I got a little bit older, he started to write to me a few more times, but we never had a strong relationship. Unfortunately, negative things were usually written. There were some positive things, but it was usually about something I'd done wrong. Jeffson said he would contribute to the workload as Jess built what he described as yearning for Zion. At 4 years old, he would pick weeds out of the flower beds and work in the gardens. He would clean bathrooms, help make breakfast, and ensure the home was tidy at all times. I grew up thinking we were building a haven where we would be the only ones left, and everyone else would be wiped off from the face of the earth, said Jeffson. Even as a child, Jeffson questioned his faith. Race was huge in the FLDS, he said. We were taught very strongly that black people were very evil. I remember at a young age, I had to go off the compound and go to the hospital, which most people didn't have an opportunity to do. and we were treated extremely well by different people, including some black people. I began to wonder at that point, why were they so bad? I also wondered why I couldn't have short sleeves, why there were certain foods I couldn't eat, like candy, and toys. I wanted toys like any kid. We didn't have those things. So yeah, historically, the FLDS and the Church of Mormon is super racist. I don't think they even changed their stance on black people until like the 80s. I'd have to look it up, but I remember seeing a cartoon about the Mormon beliefs of like God burning black people, or like it was horrifying. So yeah, every once in a while I'll see a black American who is a Mormon. And I'm just like, why? In 2006, Jeff, who was on the FBI's top most wanted list, was arrested during a routine traffic stop near Las Vegas. He was booked on 2 out-of-state warrants issued in Utah and Arizona on charges of unlawful sexual contact with a minor and rape as an accomplice. I remember as a child, that was devastating to me, said Jeffson. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. And even though I didn't have a relationship with him, I was still very concerned, and I had a love for him as my father and as the prophet of the church. We were terrified. A call suddenly came into the San Angelo domestic abuse hotline. It was from a girl who said she was 16 years old and living on the Yearning for Zion Ranch. Law enforcement entered the property looking for the teen, who identified herself as Sarah. It turned out to be a hoax. The call actually came from a 30-year-old woman living in Colorado Springs. Yeah, this is the thing on the FBI's most wanted list. Still, the details of underage marriage and sexual abuse prompted law enforcement to raid the 1,700-acre property in 2008. The Department of Family and Protective Services ordered the removal of about 437 children from the ranch, Texas Monthly reported. Jeffson, who was about 6 or 7 at the time, was one of them, along with his sister. I remember those Texas Rangers and the SWATs coming in with rifles and everything, he said. I didn't know if I was going to survive. We had been taught that these people wanted to eliminate us. It felt like it only confirmed what Warren Jeffs had taught us. Jeffson said he was separated from his mother for 6 weeks. He promised the matriarch he would stay with his sister. During what he described as the 6 longest weeks of my life, he and Sarah were at a state shelter. He and Sarah were eventually reunited with their mother. Yeah, so what happened after this raid is the social services system was overloaded and they had to just bring all the kids back. So, yeah. It was kind of useless they brought all the kids out, but they at least had this creep in custody. He's not the only one who was raping kids, not by a long shot, but yeah. According to prosecutors, Jeffs engaged in sexual abuse with 2 girls ages 12 and 14. The documentary showed how a key piece of evidence against Jeffs was an audio recording of him instructing his spiritual bride, as well as several other young women, how to please him sexually. In 2007, Jeffs tried to hang himself in a Utah jail. He was force-fed at an Arizona jail in 2009. Then in 2011, he was sentenced to life in prison. That same year, he was put in a medically induced coma after fasting in a Texas prison. He also went back and forth when he was first arrested. He told his congregation that he wasn't the real prophet, he didn't actually talk to God, and they shouldn't follow him anymore. And then I think less than 2 weeks later, he changed his mind, and he's still running the church from jail right now. Jeffson said at age 14, he and his family were cut off from the FLDS. In 2017, they relocated to New Harmony, Utah, where several former members have embarked on new lives. Jeffson's mother has remarried. As for Jeffson, this name is so hard for me to say, Jeffson, he's engaged and traveling out of the country. After Jeffson filmed his account for the documentary, he changed his last name. I couldn't be happier, he said. I want to create my own story, my own path. I want to move on. Jeffson said he doesn't have any relationship with Jeffs, and he's content with that. No matter what he says about us today, he has no control over my life, said Jeffson. I found so much love and appreciation out in this world. And that's him with his fiancée. Jeffson is aware his story is different from the many others who either left or were cast out of the FLDS. The group has lost hundreds of members in recent years. In 2017, Jeff's brother Lyle was convicted on food stamp fraud charges. Some followers still consider Jeffs to be their prophet and believe he was wrongfully convicted. We weren't crazy, Jeffson reflected. He was cunning, very manipulative in the way he made everyone love him so much, and he hid it for so long. There's no hiding that he is a pedophile and deserves to be in prison. He ruined so many lives. I hope people understand that they have the freedom to get out from under his control so that they can live their own lives. People need to be careful and watch out for someone like him who only had his own interests in mind. Peacock's Preaching Evil will premiere on April 26th. So it's already airing. I don't know. I don't have Peacock. I don't know if it's like the whole thing is out or if it's like episodic. Okay, so there's a trailer here. I'm not going to read this article, but we can just watch the YouTube link here.
I could tell they were getting undressed, and I thought, what does this have to do with heaven?
The FLDS in Short Creek always believed that Warren Jeffs was the prophet.
For a man to become a god, he must have a plurality of wives.
The ones he would groom were the lambs.
The ranch was his personal perverted Playboy mansion.
Warren Scribe was one of his wives, Naomi Jeffs.
She's taking down records of where they are every day, what Warren is saying as they're traveling.
She wrote down a roadmap to criminal activity. We were really interrupting an entire culture of sexual abuse.
He would tell us he was in a heavenly session with all these ladies getting undressed. I just couldn't believe it was happening.
Naomi helped Warren stay on the run.
I am so grateful to be the wife of our holy prophet.
To this day, I'd still like to talk to her.
Where do you want me to start?
So I think that was Naomi Jeffs there at the end. Let's Google it. I just want to see if she's in prison or not. Oh, Naomi Jessup passed away in 2015. But this is her in the documentary. So it's a different Naomi Jeffs. Well, I guess I'll have to watch it. I've actually researched this cult quite a bit. I think this is like the first one I ever did a deep dive on. I've read like a bunch of books on this, and there's a ton of videos on it you can watch on YouTube actually of like those documentaries that are like an episode of like those crime investigation shows. Yeah. Okay, so this next one, I've been very interested in this lady who has passed away now, but I don't actually know that much about her group. So let's get into it. The death of Gwen Shamblin, a fat-shaming cult leader whose plane crashed on the way to a mega rally. The two-part finale of the HBO docuseries The Way Down, God, Greed, and the Cult of Gwen Shamblin explores the cult leader's death and what her followers are up to now, by Nick Shager on thedailybeast.com. Cults make prophetic promises they can almost never fulfill, which in turn leads them to revise those guarantees in order to keep their flock in line and their scams alive. In that regard, few have faced a bigger obstacle than the Remnant Fellowship Church, whose founder and leader Gwen Shamblin routinely preached that being faithful to God, primarily by maintaining a slim waistline and training children to be docile and subservient, resulted in glorious financial, familial, and spiritual rewards. That was all well and good during the prosperous Remnant Fellowship times, but it became an onerous problem on May 29, 2021, when a plane piloted by Shamblin's husband Joe Lara crashed on its way to a Florida mega rally, instantly killing Shamblin and everyone else on board. That tragedy served as a de facto cliffhanger for The Way Down, God, Greed, and the Cult of Gwen Shamblin, HBO Max's docuseries from last September, and it's where director Marina Zenovich picks up with The Way Down Part 2, a two-installment coda that investigates what this calamity has meant for the Remnant Fellowship Church and Shamblin's attendant Way Down Workshop diet business. The latter was the vehicle that first brought fame and fortune to Shamblin herself, a nutritionist who argued that true believers should transfer their hunger for food into devotion to the Almighty. It was a program that contended that shedding pounds was an act of piousness, and via books, VHS tapes, and in-church classes, it made Shamblin a national sensation. Moreover, it allowed her to form the Remnant Fellowship Church, a Brentwood, Tennessee-based religious organization that Zenovich's expose revealed to be an insular Christian cult that punished the heavy-set, isolated members from friends and relatives, brainwashed children into embracing its Holy Trinity-denying doctrine, oppressed women through misogynistic power structures, and urged parents to abuse and beat their children into obedient submission. Wow. Notable for both her charismatic sermons and her ever-growing hair, which eventually topped out at a remarkable foot-high beehive, Shamblin promoted the notion that splendid things came to those who knelt before God, while bad things were the byproduct of unfaithfulness. Thus, her untimely demise, even more than the prior sudden death of her granddaughter, was a monumental complication for the church. The Way Down's second part is curious about how the organization's leaders will explain this situation to their legions of members, and whether anyone will buy what they're selling. Yet, what it comes up with is more than a bit deflating. Waiting 6 months before delivering its final 2 installments was apparently not long enough, as director Zenovich offers few insights into the future of Remnant Fellowship Church, whose plans for reconfiguring its doctrine and hierarchical structure remain in flux, or at least still largely hidden from public view. We can watch the trailer here.
Yes, something just exploded out in the middle of the lake. It was a huge explosion.
The search continues after a plane went down into Percy Priest Lake.
Gwen Shamblin's husband, Joe, is presumed to have been the pilot.
7 passengers are presumed dead. They are leaders of Remnant Fellowship.
Are you a prophet?
I don't know what my gift name is.
You're watching an interesting documentary right now.
Yeah, Way Down, I think it's called.
It's about this religious cult losing weight through Christ. It's bananas.
Remnant Fellowship has an incredible amount of control over the minds and thinking of its members.
They recommend that you, in a will, leave your children to the church.
When you do not obey, you are separated from God.
You hurt people over a period of years, and there's going to be karma or payback. God had something to do with this.
When Gwen Shamblin died, it set forth a catharsis.
I was nervous to speak up for years, but I just can't remain silent.
It's time that our voices matter.
I literally observed, I saw what they did to people.
Gwen broke my family. The only thing I can do is pick up the pieces.
What is this next step that they're going to take?
Elizabeth stepped forward and made it clear that Remnant Fellowship would continue on.
She worshipped her mother and wanted to be just like her mother.
What she's teaching and preaching would change America if they would follow suit.
I hope that the crash brings fallout.
We can slay this dragon.
God, please get people out of there.
So yeah, that looks interesting. The thing I reacted to there was the daughter who is continuing on in the legacy there, and she looks very ill. So that's worrisome. But continuing on, with no exciting bombshells about either the church's subsequent phase or about the fate of Lyra's former partner Natasha Pavlovich and their daughter, The Way Down shifts its attention to the plane crash itself. Early indications are that Shamblin's amateur pilot husband, Lara, a former actor who clearly married Shamblin less out of love or devoutness than out of a desire for a wealthy benefactor who'd grant him the high life and country music career he craved, was ill-equipped to handle the type of plane and low-visibility weather conditions he faced on the day of the catastrophe. CGI recreations of the craft's flight plan set to Lyra's final radio transmissions corroborate that theory, although, as one official remarks, it's clearly possible that a technical malfunction could have caused the fatal accident. As with Remnant Fellowship Church's sustainability, it's simply too early to tell. Consequently, The Way Down's return engagement feels decidedly premature. There are tantalizing intimations that Shamblin's daughter Elizabeth, seen looking frightening skeletal in archival video clips, might not be the heir apparent everyone assumed she'd be. And there's more predictable news that Elizabeth's brother, Michael, whose relationship with the church was always rocky, has divorced his wife and severed ties with his mom's empire. For the most part, however, Zenovich seems to have jumped the gun on detailing what's next for Shamblin's cult and the many acolytes she nurtured along the way, providing scant revelations that might propel her story forward. Those two supplementary can't say it. These two supplementary episodes feel like addenda that, in most respects, end the saga on an indefinite note, unsure of what Remnant Fellowship Church will look like during its ensuing era, if, that is, it continues to exist at all. Without much in the way of intriguing developments, The Way Down turns inward for its closing chapter, addressing the way in which Remnant Fellowship Church countered the negative publicity generated by the docuseries late 2021 premiere. Even there, though, Zenovich informs us about unsurprising measures taken by Shamblin's successors, namely correspondences to HBO that denied all the claims against them, and websites set up to propagate their self-serving narratives. Naturally, Remnant Fellowship Church didn't like being outed as a cult that counseled men to keep wives and daughters under their authoritarian thumb, that fully supported child-murdering members Joseph and Sonia Smith, who were convicted of killing their 8-year-old son Joseph, and that was run like a money-making venture designed to line the pockets of Shamblin and Lara, who enjoyed the myriad fruits of their followers' labor. But that was evident before, and The Way Down Part 2 adds little detail or nuance to such ideas. Most surprising of all is The Way Down second part features interviews with a handful of remnant survivors who came forward after last fall's premiere, but barely takes the time to flesh out their stories. Instead, these individuals put more effort into defending themselves against online claims that they're gullible dupes than they do recounting their harrowing personal ordeals, which is frustrating both because their contentions are less than totally convincing, given the abject nonsense Shamblin peddled, and because they offer nothing that expands our understanding of Remnant Fellowship Church's day-to-day operations. The most director Zenovich derives from these conversations is that Shamblin was reportedly homophobic as well, hardly the sort of eye-opener that justifies this disappointing meager follow-up. Wow, that was very judgmental, super judgmental article. Yeah, definitely don't think those people are gullible in any way, as this writer is trying to say. They just got caught up in a bad situation when they were vulnerable. Yeah, so that's that on that article. I am a bit interested to watch the original series of that. Don't want to pay for HBO again, though. Okay, this one is interesting. I'm not sure if I've heard of this cult before. How long we've been going now? Oh, only 20 minutes. It feels like longer because I had a false start at the beginning. So this is on the North Winds. Growing Up in a Cult, Not Fun, by Akasha Khalsa, who says, I was in a cult, not by choice, to be fair, I was a child. Frequently asked the question, did we sacrifice goats? No. What do we do? Blatant appropriation and corruption of Native American practices such as drum circles, sweat lodges, coming-of-age ceremonies, and other varying ceremonies, mixed in with group workouts, martial arts classes, and random seminars on esoteric subjects, including the Enneagram, hypnosis, and social techniques. Plus, technically, at one point, my mother did give a couple of roosters to a friend for sacrifice, but that's not strictly relevant. So at this point, I should probably give a psychological definition of the word cult because it has so many pop culture connotations. According to the Cult Education Institute, when defining cults, the most important concern today is not simply who might be somewhat cultic in their devotion now or historically, but what groups might represent potential problems regarding personal or public safety. That is, groups that are potentially unsafe and or destructive. Some characteristics which make up a cult include the presence of a charismatic leader, who increasingly becomes an object of worship, a process of coercion in which members' thoughts are reformed to the benefit of the leader, and economic, sexual, and other exploitation of members of the group, according to the Institute. And if you're wondering whether my experience fits into those criteria, yeah. In fact, cults are weirdly embedded in my family history. Separate from the group I grew up in, my father grew up in a much larger cult known as 3HO, or the Happy, Healthy, Holy organization run by Yogi Bhajan. As a side note, Vice TV recently came out with a short documentary about the abuses present in that particular organization. 3HO required that members change their names, including the mandatory last name Khalsa. And that is how I inherited the name I carry today, even though I was never a part of that group. As another side note, 3HO is the same organization that continues to produce Yogi Tea and Soothing Touch body care products, including the chapstick sold at Sunder? I'm not sure how to say that. But Yogi Tea, that was the part that fascinated me. So, yep, Yogi Tea is owned by a cult. Cults are in your local grocery store. Good to know. I will never buy Yogi Tea then. I started looking into 3HO when I was in high school and quickly realized it wasn't just a regular old religious organization as I had been told during my childhood. As a result, I started thinking about cults not just as things that happened to other people, but as something that was part of my own family history. I also came to understand why cults are harmful and how they happen. A particularly impactful piece of my research was reading through Premka Kaur Khalsa versus Yogi Bhajan, which details some of the sexual abuse experienced by the young women in Bhajan's inner circle. It was at this point that I took a look at my own life and realized I was in a cult too. And oh boy, did that explain a lot of what I've been going through. I won't go into many specifics about my process of leaving the group that I was part of, but I will say that it was one of the most difficult things I've done, and that it left a big imprint on my personality. Since then, I've tried to be open about speaking about my experiences. Earlier this semester, I participated in a research study on the experiences of cult survivors, focusing specifically on cult communication. The project was conducted by Claire D. Lorenzo at Illinois University, Edwardsville. Being a part of a research project helped me further reflect on my experiences as well as integrate and accept them. I've also realized that people often don't understand what cults are in reality, hence the question I received about goat sacrifices. A couple of my friends recently explained to me what they think of in relation to the term cult, and the results ranged from, like in the movies, like a massive hierarchy, living together, all of them having to dress the same, to strange rituals, the Kool-Aid guy, hidden remote areas. Pop culture would leave you to believe such things as only the most sensational details of cult life make it into movies and news. So what was it really like? The reality is it's just a group of self-isolating people operating under an effed up ideology. It happens easily, and more people are vulnerable to the kinds of manipulation it's built on than you might think. They can be big or small, and the severity of harm inflicted on members and those outside the group varies. My personal definition of a cult is pretty simple. If there's a hierarchy, shared ideology that isolates you from the rest of the world and molds your personality, as well as the presence of some form of abuse, then voila, it's a cult. Main takeaways: I'll probably continue recovering from my years living in a cult for quite some time. Meanwhile, if you find yourself wondering whether your own experience is with a religious or ideological driven organization meet the above criteria, that's probably a sign you need to leave. Seriously, leave ASAP. I truly understand how difficult it is, but your entire life will improve dramatically once you free yourself. And for the rest of you, just remember that cults aren't always like what you see in the movie, so please stop asking me about goats. Okay, so Yogi Tea, don't buy it. Okay, I'm going to try and read this for as long as I can, as this stream is rather short, but I do feel my stomach growling. Maybe the mic is picking that up. Okay, so this is on Vice. Oh, that's not the writer. The writer is Nick Thompson. How one man tried to build a DMT-based cult on Reddit and lost everything. In his mid-50s, a depressed Yale-trained scientist took a potent psychedelic, saw God, and set out to spread the word. Within 2 years, he was dead. Oh my God, excuse me. So this is insanely long. I'm just going to read the intro and hopefully you get an idea. But I don't believe this is currently active. As I said, the guy who started it is dead now. So Sometime on a Sunday morning in 2019, perhaps mindful not to wake his lodger, a childhood friend who was staying over, 57-year-old Chris Cantelmo left a note. In it, he said he was going for a walk and that he'd be back in a few hours. He told his friend not to let the dogs out. Cantelmo slipped out of his Lakeview Terrace ranch. It was warm for late November, warmer than the days that would follow. He hiked some 4 miles from his house into the Angeles National Forest, which delineates LA's lazily sprawling northern limits. At a certain moment, he stopped. He had 2 folding knives on him. He took one and turned it on himself in such a way that he died within minutes. Cantelmo had been the leader of what is most easily described as a Reddit pseudo-cult known as Cantelmoism. He was famous for handing out free money and claiming DMT cured his cancer. After he first tried the drug in 2018, he'd later say he wanted to turn the world onto it. DMT, the substance he obsessively promoted, especially through the spring and summer of 2019, is a powerful hallucinogenic. When consumed, inhaled, snorted, injected in a high enough dose, it provides an intense psychedelic trip. It also has potential therapeutic benefits. As Vice has reported, it's been studied as a treatment for depression. The DEA currently classifies DMT as a Schedule I drug. Cantelmo had been a wealthy biochemist and Yale grad. He gained notoriety on Reddit because he was spending thousands there, indiscriminately gilding posts and comments by gifting awards. Through this, he was buying users' attention. In return, they were exposed to his theories about DMT and a few specific subreddits set up in his name. The main one, created on April 16, 2019, by a now deleted user, was the now defunct R. Cantelmoism. There were others like the still open R. Chris CGC and the now private R. Children of Chris. The description of Cantelmoism read, "The official subreddit for the newly emerged internet religion Cantelmoism approved by the Lord." User Chris CGC himself. Cantelmo was one of the best-known users on Reddit, a labyrinthine site, the beauty of which lies partly in its anonymity and which is otherwise not set up to elevate individual accounts like Twitter and Instagram do. Those who continually participated in this corner of Reddit, albeit often ironically making memes praising Cantelmo and defending his views, called themselves Cantelmoists, but the message of Cantelmoism and its oddly cult-like nature was causing concern among Redditors. That's because some of the claims he was making had potential real-world implications for those who believed them, and he was targeting younger people. Most of Cantelmo's Reddit posts have since been deleted or removed. Cantelmoism was banned, as was Cantelmo's main Reddit account, Chris CGC. His so-called DMT discoveries still exist online, however. God emits a cosmic broadcast of electromagnetic waves, one on his website says. Humans and all other living creatures with a nervous system can receive information from God's cosmic broadcast while their neural network is enabled by DMT. According to another discovery of his, adding DMT to an adult brain via orally active ayahuasca or by vaping DMT crystals allows people to see the spirits which are always around us but otherwise invisible, including a multitude of guardian angels voluntarily assigned to each of us. Schizophrenia and autism are one and the same and result from a relative overabundance of bioavailable DMT. From here on, these syndromes can be unified as autophrenia. Autophrenics are geniuses and were created by God to be leaders of humanity, claims another. Okay. Cantelmo also posted on YouTube. The videos have since been made private, though they've been archived. Facebook and Twitter. He encouraged people to stare at the sun to promote DMT production in the pineal gland. Central to Eastern mystic beliefs relating to a third eye, the pineal gland is a small organ in the brain that moderates serotonin and sleep cycles. It's been hypothesized, though not proven, that it produces low levels of DMT in the human brain. DMT has been proven to exist in the brains of rats at levels comparable to serotonin and dopamine. It's also been found in every mammal studied, including humans. I thought it was proven to be in human brains, and that's how you dream when you're sleeping. It's like DMT being pumped in. I don't know. Cantelmo's most striking and oft-repeated claim that vaporizing the drug cured his brain cancer sparked incredulity and intrigue. He even invited cancer patients to try DMT at his LA ranch as treatment. By the time of his death, he had largely been outcast by the online movement he'd started, and his accounts were banned and relationships burned. But who was he, and why did he die in this remote hinterland? I want to keep reading it. Okay, I'll keep going a bit longer. Alex Hall, then a 28-year-old podcaster, author, and freelance video producer, first noticed Cantelmo trending on Reddit in 2019 due to his gilding sprees. It was the cancer-curing claim that struck him most. If you have someone that is so public-facing that has a long, prestigious career, making a well-articulated claim that carries a different amount of weight to it, Hall said. Cantelmo had been successful. A high school valedictorian and Yale molecular biophysics and biochemistry graduate, he spent 35 years in the pharmaceutical industry. He worked in the field of high-performance liquid chromatography, or HPLC. HPLC involves taking a mixture of chemicals and deciding what's in it for analysis and purification. According to Cantelmo, he ran 3 HPLC companies. The last one was called GL Sciences. He left his position, GL Sciences, which is not associated with Cantelmoism or the use of illegal drugs, wouldn't respond to our attempts to clarify the details. I guess they mean his companies are still running. So by mid-2019, though, Cantelmo was increasingly known for his enthusiasm for DMT. Hall was intrigued and asked Cantelmo to appear on his off-topic podcast, The Digital Fireside. The most popular episode has 20,000 views on YouTube. But Hall is also the creator of a popular alternate reality game serial called Ben Drowned. His YouTube channel has over 15 million views. Cantelmo explained his journey with DMT on the May 22, 2019 podcast. He said lifelong anxiety and resulting depression led him to attempt suicide for the 3rd time on January 15, 2018. I got in touch with my kids late one night and said, "Hey, I'm going to kill myself. Sorry, but I just can't stand this anymore." That is a terrible burden to put on your children, even if they're grown adults. He told Hall police intercepted him at his house after his sons reported the event, and he was placed on what's called a 5150 hold, where authorities involuntarily place an individual in a locked psychiatric facility for evaluation. Remembering his short stint there, he said, "Somehow I got the message, just the thought came to me that I needed to try DMT when I left the hospital." There's a bunch of his videos linked in this article, but I don't really want to dive into those. After some research, he went online and ordered the root bark of the DMT-containing Mimosa hostilis tree. He purified it, he told Hall, relying on his knowledge of organic chemistry and biochemistry, and began experimenting. He eventually inhaled enough to have a breakthrough, where one might experience an enlightening union with the divine. Cantelmo told Hall he felt his anxieties evaporate. He was also convinced there was a higher power after a lifetime of severe atheism, something that happens in over half of DMT users. "I thought, oh goodness, God exists, and everything in my world changed. Life became incredibly beautiful," he explained. He said he encountered the benign mystical entities DMT users often see. The psychonaut Terence McKenna referred to them as machine elves. What the fuck am I reading? Cantelmo resolved to tell as many people as possible about the wonders of DMT. A friend suggested he try Reddit. There, Cantelmo found the award system allowed him blah, 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 to draw attention to DMT and its miraculous properties and to bring universal peace and love to our ailing planet. It's all about his activity on Reddit. Using his main account, Cantelmo spent over $70,000 on awards, but Craig suggested he spent probably twice as much in total. He targeted users in youth-oriented subreddits and encouraged them to make and spread memes praising the benefits of DMT. Oh my god. Oh god, okay, there's Joe Rogan. Tiger said that during his stay, Cantelmo took him to the Hollywood Improv to see Joe Rogan perform. this whole time I was reading, I was thinking of Joe Rogan. Like, oh my God. Cantelmo, a friend he called Coma David and Tiger, ate dinner there, and Rogan sat out in the lobby with other comic friends like Andrew Santino. Cantelmo kept saying he would go over and introduce himself in hopes of going on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, but he never did. Instead, he had to take David, who had started feeling ill, back home during Rogan's opener. Tiger said he managed to meet Rogan after they left. It's easy to wonder what might have happened if Cantelmo had impressed Rogan even a little. I just want to know, like, what led him to a suicide. A little while after Hall visited LA, word got out that Cantelmo had never had cancer. This was backed up by his brother Craig, who confirmed it with Cantelmo's family. There was never a shred of truth that he could find about any of that, he told me. When Hall messaged asking point blank, Cantelmo said it was a metaphorical cancer of the brain, referring to his previous fervent atheism. That's just doubly offensive. Cantelmo seemed slightly manic, addressed this in a video, admitting people should filter everything he does through the prism of getting people's attention. Quote, I never had any form of cancer, but I do believe that DMT will cure it. It will cure all your diseases. I know that for a fact. I had the worst form of cancer, atheism, and DMT cured that, he said. On Sunday, November 24th, someone found Cantelmo's body on West Fork Fascination Spring Trail. He died by suicide. 2 folding knives were found with him, but no suicide note. The LA County Sheriff's Department told me he was under threat of losing his house and that he was due to meet a realtor to figure out how to avoid it. The circumstances of his death did lead to some posting that he was murdered or had been assisted in some way. Gary Watts, president of the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners, told me that based on the autopsy report and general background information provided, Cantelmo's injuries in lieu of any defense wounds were consistent with suicide. I don't believe that there's any question about it being self-inflicted, Watts said. No drugs were found in Cantelmo's system, though it isn't standard practice in LA County to test for DMT. Even to this day, when I talk about it, I get emotional. I hate seeing people in pain, and I can't imagine what kind of pain he was in, Zorro told me. Zorro, earlier in the article, is someone who was a believer, I think. He's out of money and realized that the viral effect that he had online was only because of the money he was spending. Cantelmo's doc's friend said, he really thought he was going to go and be with the spirits that he was seeing, and maybe he did. Maybe he is, but it really broke my heart reading about his suicide because I think Chris was a really good person and he did care about other people. He needed some help that he just wasn't able to get, and a lot of that falls in the United States mental health care system, he said. When someone's an adult, all that we can do is call the police. If he tells the cops, I'm not suicidal, what can you do, you know? And then the ending of the article, Cantelmo's story shows the gray between influencer and actual cult leader. He had told me that he had 100,000 followers, Craig said. But that was at the end when I told him he needed to get help. He was like, I need help? You need help. I have 100,000 followers. But that means absolutely nothing when you're paying them. Those who knew him said similar things to me. Cantelmo was exceptionally smart, articulate, generous. They didn't want the public spectacle of it all. The Reddit furor and DMT to eclipse the person he was at his best. Life's all about timing, Craig impresses on me. Right before his death and right after his death, I got freaking stuck going down the wormhole watching all the stuff. And it was very sad at times, and other times there were moments of brilliance where I knew him, Craig told me. And if he really wanted to be a cult leader 30 years ago, I'm serious, he probably could have been one. He could have got a shitload of people following him. So yeah, that is on Vice.com if you would like to read the full thing. But that's it for this evening. I hope that this was educational in some way, and I will see you all next week for the next episode of Occult News. This video will be archived up on my side channel on YouTube, on the Word Grub channel. And you can check out my main channel, Hikipedia, on YouTube as well. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.